Hey class, and welcome to HTML Basics. So in this video I just want to answer the question, what is HTML? HTML is a markup language, and all websites use HTML to structure the content that's displayed on the page. HTML is basically text. So let's start off with some text. So this sentence that we've typed is just plain ordinary text, and I can see that it's rendering in my preview area in my CodePen. But if I try to make a new line and write something else, what I see is that my text is just displayed all as one line. The only reason why burgers went to the next line is because the window wasn't big enough. So the text just wrapped. So this text is just plain ordinary text. And there is no HTML, there's no markup to describe this text for the browser. So using HTML, we can convert this text to HTML elements. An element is made up of tags. So HTML contains an open tag and a close tag. And they look the same. They both have these little brackets, this little less than symbol and greater than symbol, or sometimes I'll refer to them as angle brackets just because it's fast. And it's the same thing on both sides, except on the right side there's a little slash. So the main difference between an open tag and a closing tag is the slash. The slash designates a closing tag, and we'll get into why that is in a second. But within this we have our tags, and then in the center we have our content, and this entire thing is referred to as an element in HTML. Sometimes we'll just talk about the letter P here, this little piece of code, and that is the name of the element. But the entire thing is an element. If I wanted to select this with JavaScript or CSS, we'd be referring to this entire P tag. In the second P tag, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'll start off with my angle brackets and I'll put the letter P inside them. And then on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing, except I'll put a slash P. Now I'm going to add something extra inside the open tag, and this extra thing I'm going to add is called an attribute. So the first pattern in HTML code is that we have these angle brackets and we have a letter on the inside. Sometimes the letter is more, it could be a word like header or section. Those are words instead of just single letters. But some kind of a code here that represents the name of the element. And then on the other side we have the slash to close it. So that's the basic pattern. The second pattern is attributes. Attributes are like extra pieces of code that we can place inside the open tag in an HTML element. Class is an attribute that we can add to a tag, and it allows us to identify this specific P tag that makes it, something about it makes it different than the other P tag. So with a class name, I can sort of define a different identifier that I can use to select this P tag in CSS or JavaScript. So let's change this to, I'll just write yellow. Okay, so CodePen likes to remind us when we've made a bunch of changes without saving, so that's good. You should always save your work. And just a note, if you don't rename your file, if you leave this as untitled, you may lose your work. So be sure to click on the pencil icon and name your file HTML Basics and save your progress as you go. The next thing that we should talk about is how do you nest elements? So these are two patterns here. We have how do we open a tag and close a tag? How do we add an attribute? And then the third pattern I want to talk about is called nesting elements. So nesting elements is where we have elements inside other elements. So if I copy this line up here and I want to emphasize a word, I can use another tag or another element called the strong tag. So the strong tag makes a letter or a word bold. That's effectively what it does in HTML. Structurally, what this means is that we're strongly emphasizing this word, and that's usually represented by bold text on the screen. It doesn't have to be, though. We could write rule sets to change how that looks. But the value of using this tag here is that it's strongly emphasized, not just visually, but for text to speech, the word should be emphasized in the text reader. So the voice that's reading this text should emphasize this word in some way, because we've labeled it as strong and we want to strongly emphasize this single word. Now what I want to point out here is that the strong tag did not create its own line. It just changed the word that's inside the p tag. So my favorite is also in those words are inside the p tag, but those are not bold. Those are just regular. And it starts its own line. And if I put something after it, that text will also be on its own line. And that's because the p element, the p tag here, this is called a block level element. And that means that it's always its own block. It always starts its own line, and things that follow it will be on their own line. So just imagine a rectangle that goes all the way around this paragraph tag. And it starts on the left and it goes all the way to the edge of the screen here on the right. The strong element is a inline element, and that means that it does not start its own line. It has special layout properties that allow it to just stay where it is inside of the block tag that it's a child of. Okay, so now that we've done that, there is another pattern to HTML that we need to talk about, and that is something called void elements. Void elements are elements that don't contain text. They don't contain content in between the tags. So with a p tag, we're marking up words, and so we have an open tag where the words begin, and then a closed tag where the words end. But some content, like images, they don't contain text. It's just an image file. So the element for an image file is img, and img has two attributes, the src attribute and the alt attribute. But there's no closing tag. I'm going to add something to the src attribute so that we can see a photo render in the page. And I'm going to use a service called pixum.photos to just place a random image on the screen. And when you use pixum.photos, you have to give it two numbers after the URL. So here I have HTTPS, and then the web address pixum.photos, and then a slash, and I'll just type 200 for the width, and then 300 for the height. And now I can see that there's an image that was placed on my web page, and that image is 200 pixels wide and 300 pixels tall. So this is a really useful service for web developers because you can just place placeholder images on your page until you get the actual photograph that you need to put in your web page. Now, there's another attribute here called ALT, and I'm just going to put a description of our image here. Now this is a placeholder image, and your image would be different than mine. So the ALT isn't really necessary here, but I'm just going to describe it as a placeholder image. And what's useful about the ALT is that if there's something wrong with my image, if the image is blocked, or if there's an error in here, or if the image is deleted from its location on the web, it won't show up. It'll display usually a broken image icon, but the alternative text will be displayed instead. So if I just delete this, now I have a broken image, but the words "a placeholder image" are showing up on screen. This text is also read to the user if they're using a screen reader. So that's another value to the alternative text within an image. But the most important concept here is that this is a void tag. There's no text that I need to mark up. There's just an image file, the source file, and then alternative text in case that source file doesn't work. But there's no text that I'm marking up here. Now the last pattern that I'd like to describe in this video is what's called the HTML skeleton. And in CodePen, we're just writing tags over here in our HTML editor, and those tags are being rendered on the left-hand side of the screen here in my preview panel. But if I go to my change view options and I choose debug mode, my page is loaded in a new tab, and I can see just the preview of my HTML here. If I inspect the elements, I can see that there's more code than just what I wrote in my HTML tab. I have a p tag, I have my p tags, I have my image tag, but I have another tag that's surrounding that, and that's called the body tag. And then above that, I see a tag called head. Let me zoom in on this. So inside the web page, there are other tags that are necessary to display valid HTML on a web page. We have this top line here is called the doc type. The next line is the root tag, and that's the HTML tag. And then we have a head tag. Inside the head tag, we have meta tags and links to other resources that are necessary for our page. And then after the head tag, we have a body tag. And then at the bottom, we just close everything. So the doc type is a weird one because it doesn't look like a regular tag, and it doesn't have a closing tag anywhere. It's just the first thing on the web page. And the doc type tells the browser that this is an HTML file and what version HTML we're writing. This is the specification for HTML version 5. And then what follows is just our tags. And the patterns that are in the skeleton is the HTML tag, immediately followed by the head tag, with a title. We can see the title is right here, CodePen-HTML Basics. This is what's displayed in the tab of your web browser. And then following the head tag is the body tag. And that's where everything that we want to display on screen is written. So here's all of our elements that we see displayed on the screen. And then finally, you close the body tag and you close the HTML tag. These are the basic patterns in HTML. In the next video, I plan on exploring more basic tags that you can use to mark up the content of a web page. I'll see you there. Thanks.